So hi, you guys. Just a nice Peterson. Well, doggone it. I'm gonna have to have that looked at. Probably just needs a good cleaning. I hate cleaning my pipes. I know I should, and usually I try to every year. I have it loaded with, what was it I put in there this morning? You never know from me. Some Dunbar. Just some good old English Dunbar. Dunhill, I believe. I was cutting some plug earlier. So I was getting ready to go do some things today. And so I thought, well, you know what? I need to look at my everyday carry and see what all was in it. It was a mess. I have like 5 or 6 bags of that's what it looks like anyway. I had 5 or 6 pipes in there. Tons of, let me rephrase that, because it's hard for me to talk when I have a pipe in my mouth. And that's a big pipe. You almost have to hold it. And that's why, I usually have a smaller pipe. So let me light up a smaller pipe real quick so that I can talk to you at the same time. And I'll just grab one of Paul's little pipes because it's already loaded anyway. And I can clench it. That's why I like a smaller pipe. Of course, no one ever understands what a word I say, but, Okay, so when I got into my everyday carry, I found some problems, too. And I don't know how old this one is because I have like 6 of them, and so I pick them up for a while. But when I got into my my thing, this is a Joby case, but you'll see how that rubber has deteriorated and kind of stuck to the other side. And I don't know why. This is the first time I've ever had this happen to one. And it could just be heat, could be age, could be anything, That's the problem. When you have tobacco, which is by nature a moist product, you're going to have problems. I'm outside, so sometimes I don't get a good light on my pipes. So, when I pulled out my everyday carry, these are okay. These just have a couple of things, pipes in them, pipe tools in them. And then I get into this part of it, and I always carry a couple of extra pipes. This is just a very nice Dr. Grable. Wonderful cake in there. I don't know if you can see it or not. And then this is a great big bowl that I don't smoke. But they're, whenever I'm around people that are smoking, or people that aren't smoking, or people that are smoking cigars, cigarettes, I always like to have a couple extra pipes in case I can convince them to try a pipe. Because I think that pipe smoking is better than cigarette smoking. So there's always a couple of those. Usually they're in a bag. So that's why I'm kind of surprised at this one. This one, of course, there's a million pipe cleaners in there. And then in this side I have one of my Dunhills. And then I had that big ass Peterson. And I'm not sure why in this particular pipe case all it is was big pipes, because I'm not usually a big pipe person, but I must have been planning on carrying. And then there's this case, and it's got it's wrapped in another bag inside of there, and it's the McClellan's Classic. What is this? Coyote Classic. But a lot of times I'll take and put my, even though I have nice tobacco pouches, I'll take and put my tobacco into a plastic because of things like that. The tobacco that was in there now, I will have to, well, I already threw out It was no good. But I had I had the Dunbar in there. I had that in there, and then in the middle I had a tin of So to Bed, an unopened tin of So to Bed. What's your everyday carry look like? You know, I am just amazed at how much stuff I can get into one of these little bags. There's all kinds of little things to give to people too in there. So, you know, there's always, you know, my little leather pennies, which you know, well, you probably didn't know, but it was inside of Paul's to keep my pipe in there. And I always have 2 or 3 of my little tampers, although I have to admit, I have a tamper asshole that lives with me. I don't ever see it. It's like, you know, the tooth fairy you never see. And, you know, she comes and leaves you money and takes your teeth. Well, there's this tamper asshole, because he can't be a tamper fairy, because he never leaves me tampers. He comes around at night and steals my tampers, and I never see them again. And then there'll be a time when they'll just all show up again. So, like I say, watch out. I'm sure that every household has one. Let's see. So I was going to load up something today. What am I going to load up today? I'm enjoying the Dunbar, and I had some flake in one of these. This might actually be, I think this is Dunhill flake. So why don't I load up some Orlick? This one isn't a very old one. Yeah. It's only 4 or 5 years old. Was it Orlick? I had a whole bunch of square tins I sent off to some friends, because they were wanting the square tins, which was, you know, a definite age on them and stuff, and I had some to spare. So I had said at one time that I was going to tell everybody how I got started smoking a pipe. So how did I get started smoking a pipe? Well, I was a kid. I loved my daddy. My dad would travel a lot and stuff, and him and his friends, you know, they would be sitting around smoking pipes, because my dad smoked a pipe, smoked cigarettes too, smoked everything, but mainly smoked pipes. And so one day, I was 4 years old, and I wanted to smoke a pipe like my daddy. So I took my bubble pipe and I dipped it into a couple of jars of his tobacco to fill up my bubble pipe. Well, you know, the bubble pipe wasn't really quite empty of the bubble soap, and so I ruined 3 tins of his tobacco, 3 little storage containers. So he said, I just knew I was going to get in so much trouble. Well, not at first. At first I thought I wasn't going to get caught. You know, you're 4 years old, and you're thinking you're a big deal with your pipe full of tobacco. He said, if you're going to smoke a pipe, then, you know, we're going to do it right. So I'd been able to go, there was this guy named J.J. Jackson, and he had a shop downtown Missouri. And so my dad took me over there, and he bought me a little small size 2 apple pipe, a Dunhill. But he let me pick any pipe in the store I wanted out of the Medicos. Now, Medico back then, they had probably 5,000 different types of pipes. No, the pipe smoking back then, there was a lot of pipes. I mean, you could go to Katz, and that's where we went, to Katz. K-A-T-Z drugstore, and got me a pipe. And I picked out my own Medico pipe, and got the little box with it and everything. And then he let me pick out a pouch of tobacco, and I think it was Captain Black. And so I wasn't allowed to light the pipe, and I couldn't take the pipe out of the house. There was rules, you know, to everything, like little kids get. But I got to sit around with my dad and all of his friends from the time I was like 4 and 5. And I got to load up my Medico and I, would imitate them and stuff. And I got to sit in there and play like I was smoking my pipe with my dad's friends and my dad and stuff. And if my dad would sit down on the couch after dinner or sit down, in his easy chair after dinner and load up a pipe, I would too. And we'd watch TV, like when Elvis came on and things like that. We had to go in there and watch them. But we would sit down and I got to smoke a pipe. Now, I had 2 sisters, and just so you know, I was my dad's favorite. But don't tell my sisters that, because each of them think they were too. But my dad, back then the smoking situation was not like it was. I mean, I can remember out on our coffee table, there was this little elephant, and it had these little holes in it. And what it is when people came over, you stuck the cigarettes in there so that it was offering everybody a cigarette anytime they wanted. And it's a whole lot different. If you look at old movies, they have people, like doctors smoking in surgery rooms or in hospitals and stuff. Back then, it was just a different era for smoking. So I got to grow up with pipe smokers. I was always, I will admit though, we was at a dinner with, a bunch of them, and I'm out on the patio with the boys. And I was smoking my pipe. And those old guys, heck, they were probably in their 20s and 30s, early 20s, early 30s. They were talking about cake. And so I sat out there for like an hour waiting on the cake. Finally, I asked, okay, so when are we going to get the cake? And that's when I was explained for the very first time, at 5 or 6, what cake in a pipe was. I was so disappointed. I was waiting on that cake. And that's how I got introduced to pipe smoking. I didn't actually get to smoke a pipe at that point, but my dad traveled, and we traveled a lot with my dad. I had a great childhood. Back then, the roads were not like they are now. And so my mom didn't like loading my dad's pipes. So I was lucky enough that I got to sit in the front seat, sometimes between them, but as everybody got older and bigger and stuff, my mom would sit in the back seat rather than sit up front, and I would load my dad's pipes. So my dad taught me, how to load the pipe for him. And, if I didn't do it right, he handed it back to me and said, do it again. And so eventually that's how I learned. And then it got, I guess I was like 10 or 11. I know, child abuse, eh? You know how that first light of the pipe and then you need to tamp it down and stuff? My dad taught me how to light his pipe for the first time and to go ahead and tamp that down and light it again so that when I handed it over to him as he's driving, and you gotta remember, I'm 10, 12 years old, it was already ready to go. And that was also a way for him to make sure that I had loaded it right and stuff. So I kind of got to have the, I always got to ride shotgun because I was the one that would load the pipe for him and stuff and clean his pipe out when he was done, it was just kind of like that thing for him and I to do that made me his little pipe girl. And that's how I got introduced to pipes, because I never knew a time when there wasn't pipes and tobacco around. My mom's family was tobacco growers, so we grew up dancing in the barley fields and burley. I've said barley 2 or 3 times, I don't know why, but we grew up in the tobacco fields, so it was kind of fun. And there were specialized tobacco fields too, where we would actually go out there and put paper bags over the top of the flowers so that they would only germinate themselves, so that type of tobacco those seeds could be carried on. And you'd be amazed at how many seeds are that one or two tobacco plant produces, because those seeds are so itty bitty, tiny, 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 that, you know, it was a lot of fun growing up. Didn't have the television, didn't have your instant gratification that you get, you know, from playing a video game or anything. You know, TV, by the time I was 10 or 12, you got the 3 channels. But out in the country, you weren't always too sure about even getting those 3 channels. You did get the radio, the 3 channels, if the weather was right. So I grew up in a different world, and so for us, we lived in the city in the wintertime, and was on the farms a lot in the summertime. But the falls were great. The winters were, like I say, I was introduced on a cellular level. We got to travel with my dad because he bought and sold briar. But even then, back in those days, traveling was, if you think it was hard to travel after 9/11, imagine what it was like after World War II. You know, and then the Korean War and the things that were going on. You couldn't just do business in any country you wanted to. You had to have so much paperwork, so much applications and stuff, and so many permits to do business, to travel and stuff like that. But when you're a guy and a wife, and you're traveling with 3 little girls that are all dressed up to the max and stuff, I think us traveling as a family made it a little bit easier for my dad to travel. But that's my introduction. Hi, you guys. My name is Sue Dunhill, and I live in Kansas, and I like it. Happy, happy, joy, joy. You know I'm watching you. There's a song that goes with that. And, you know, happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy. And sometimes I do it. Ren and Stimpy did the best version of that. And if you go to happy, happy, joy, joy, Ren and Stimpy, you will see their video. And that's my life. Happy, happy, joy, joy. You know I'm watching you.